Hi, I'm Pam and I'm here to talk about retro video games. So this video is about my personal top 5 games on the PlayStation 2. Now, with a library of almost 1,900 North American releases, it's a little bit difficult to pick only 5 games, but I think I've narrowed it down. The first game is Beyond Good and Evil. Beyond Good and Evil was developed by Ubisoft and released in 2003. It's a third-person action-adventure game that takes place in the future on a distant planet called Hillis. The planet is under attack by the aliens called the Doms. You play Jade, a photojournalist and member of the Resistance who is out to uncover the alien conspiracy and protect her home. The gameplay combines combat, stealth, platforming, puzzle solving, working with companions to get ahead, and even some photography. So, Beyond Good and Evil is a game that I don't remember how I first came upon it. I'm going to assume that I saw the cover in EB Games and saw that there was a girl on the cover and picked it up because of that. But this game has been one of my favorites over the years. It's got a lot of really sort of varied gameplay and varied mechanics. You play Jade, who takes on many roles. She's, first of all, a caregiver. She runs an orphanage that takes care of all the children whose parents have been captured or killed by the Doms, who are attacking their home planet of Hillis. She's also a fighter, as you find out throughout the game and get better at throughout the game. She's a photojournalist, so she's a seeker of truth, because there's something going on behind these alien attacks that just reeks of conspiracy, and she's out to find out what it is. Then she also is a little bit like a National Geographic photographer, which is something that I wanted to be when I was a kid, among 100 other things. One of the quests that you get right near the beginning of the game to make some extra money is to catalog all the animal species of Hillis. So as you go around, you have to find all the different animal species and photograph them, and I thought that was a pretty cool thing to do. Like, it adds a little bit of a collection aspect to the game, but it feels meaningful, like you're doing it for a reason, and it's something fun to do rather than just picking up, random collectibles around the world. So this is just a really fun game. There's some parts of it that remind me a little bit of Ocarina of Time in sort of how the combat is done, and especially some of the animations after you beat a boss and, find something. It's not a piece of heart, but you find a pearl, and it sort of reminds me of Ocarina of Time there. So this is just a really great, fun game. It's got sci-fi elements, fantasy elements. There's some vehicle stuff, and the vehicle stuff is actually really fun. There's even combat and races. The soundtrack is great. And overall, this is just one of those games that sort of makes me happy every time I go back and play it. The next game on my list gives us a little bit of the old ultra-violence. It's God of War.
The gods of Olympus have abandoned me.
God of War was developed by Sony Santa Monica and released exclusively on the PlayStation 2 in 2005. It's a third-person action-adventure game where you take on the role of Kratos, a very angry Spartan warrior. He's on a mission to kill Ares, the god of war, as Ares was responsible for the deaths of Kratos' wife and child. So I remember God of War causing quite a stir when it came out. I remember everyone was talking about this game and playing this game. And one of the things that sticks out to me when I went back to capture the footage for this video is just how good it looks for a PlayStation 2 game. Like, the animations are so smooth and fluid. When Kratos uses his blades of chaos and they just sort of fly around on the chains, and it's almost like a dance, and it's really just beautiful and smooth, and just the animation seems so much better than a lot of other games of that sort of era. So God of War is quite different from the other games on my list, a little bit more violent than most of the ones that I've chosen, but one of the things that really appealed to me was its focus on Greek mythology, which is something I was really into throughout high school and things. I was always watching Xena and Hercules, and it was cool seeing it come to life in a video game, even if it coming to life meant that we then turned around and killed all the Greek gods. I just found that the story itself was really appealing, the gameplay was really fun. This is one of the games that really focused on QuickTime events, and I know a lot of people aren't super into those, but I enjoy them a lot. It makes the experience a lot more sort of cinematic and allows more things to be scripted and then just look nicer on screen than they would otherwise. While at the same time, there's still a ton of just, you know, gameplay that's like normal, where you're not just hitting one button to do a series of moves. So overall, this was just a really fun game. It looks great, it still looks great, and I think I'm gonna have to give it another play sometime soon.
The next game on my list is Shadow of the Colossus. Shadow of the Colossus was developed by Team Ico as a spiritual successor to their prior game, and released for the PlayStation 2 in 2005. It's classified as an action-adventure game, but it's much more than that. You play a man named Wander, who enters a forbidden land to bring back someone from the dead. To do this, he must defeat 16 colossi.
In Shadow of the Colossus, you play a guy who's traveled to a mysterious land to bring his girlfriend back to life. Maybe it's his friend, maybe it's his sister. That part's not really clear. But what is clear is that in order to do this, you need to find and hunt and kill colossus that are populating this mysterious land that you're in. And the game has this weird sort of emotional tone. Like from the very beginning, you get to this place and there's just this feeling of loneliness and emptiness. I mean, the game is quite beautiful, but there's something about it that's just a little bit off. And when you finally, well, not finally, it happens pretty quickly, but when you find your first colossus, it's this huge, monstrous beast that provides you with this really epic fight that functions a bit like a puzzle, because each colossus has a series of weak spots, and you need to attack those weak spots in order to bring it down, because you are very small compared to them. So you have to seek out these spots that, you know, in some colossus you'll climb up his leg and you'll, you know, stab him in the ankle, and that'll cause him to fall, and then you can climb up him to get to the next weak spot. So it's this sort of rush of exhilaration as you're climbing on top of these huge beasts, and you're hanging on as they're trying to shake you off. And when you finally kill one, there's this sense that, wow, you did it, you conquered it, but at the same time there's this sort of sadness, and that sort of gets more and more pervasive as you go through the game. Most video games have you as the hero, like you're the conqueror, you're saving something, whereas in this game, though your intentions of bringing this girl back to life seem pure enough, as you take on and kill more and more of the colossi, you feel like you're an invader. You're not a hero. They're not hostile towards you, so you are the one picking a fight with them and murdering them, basically, in their homes. So it starts to feel very sad, and then as the story goes along, this sort of adds to it about what you're doing and what is happening to the main character. But it's just one of those games that has just stuck with me so much, and it just has a different feeling and a different sort of emotions conjured from this game than most video games do. And if you haven't played this one, I definitely recommend it. The next game on my list is a scary one. It's Fatal Frame 2.
Didn't we always promise each other that we would always be together?
Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly was developed by Tecmo and released for the PS2 in 2003. It's a Japanese survival horror game that follows twin sisters Miyu and Mayu, who find themselves lost in an abandoned village. Throughout the game, they encounter and combat ghosts and learn the awful truth about the village's mysterious crimson sacrifice ritual.
So Fatal Frame is one of the ones that I actually do remember how it came into my life. My good friend Melissa one day asked me over to her place, and she's like, "Do you want to play a scary game?" I was like, "Sure, let's play." So she sets up her PlayStation for me, puts it on, hands me the controller, and then leaves the room. I was like, "What? What's going on here?" She's like, "Oh yeah, I'm just going to go in the other room and draw." I was like, "You invited me over so I could play video games by myself?" And she's like, "Yeah, I tried to play it before and it's too scary. I don't want to play." So I was like, "Oh, I guess I'll sit here in your house and play scary video games by myself." So I didn't get too far at that point. But then I had another friend, Heather, who we would play scary games together. So I ended up playing through the whole game with her. And she was a little bit braver about it, although I did have the controller thrown at me a number of times when something scary would happen, which has happened to me many times since with other games. But Fatal Frame is particularly scary. I don't know what exactly it is. I mean, it's sort of your basic Japanese horror game. It's got young Japanese schoolgirls who walk very slowly. It's got fixed camera angles. It's got really good, creepy sound design. The thing about the Fatal Frame series is that it features the camera obscura, which is a camera that lets you see ghosts and things that aren't really there, as well as it being your main way to combat the ghosts. So rather than sort of your typical fighting, you're taking pictures of the ghosts and damaging them that way. And as I said before, I really like photography in games, so the use of the camera in Fatal Frame was particularly good. As I was replaying the game just to get the footage for this video, I found that it's still just as scary as it was the first time I played it. Even though games have sort of evolved to be even more scary and have even more jump scares, this one was still just very quietly unnerving the whole time. There's these sounds of bells and chimes that set things off. It's got a way of letting you know when a ghost is near, so like in Silent Hill, where the radio will tell you when a monster is near, in this, when there's a ghost, the whole screen will take on like a film grain effect, so you know that something bad is happening. And those fixed camera angles allow it to be really sort of cinematic and purposeful in how the ghosts approach you and, you know, what you're seeing on the screen when something scary happens. So Fatal Frame 2 is just, of all the horror games I played, I think it's my favorite one of all. I thought maybe I should replay it at some point, but it's scary and I think I need someone to play along with this time too. And finally, my favorite game on the PlayStation 2, Shadow Hearts Covenant.
Shadow Hearts Covenant was developed by Nautilus and released for PS2 in 2004. It's a JRPG and is a direct continuation of Yuri's story from the first game, though there are enough flashbacks that you won't miss too much if you haven't played the first game. The game takes place during World War I and follows Yuri and his companions as they travel around the globe in an attempt to save the world.
Shadow Hearts Covenant is the second game in a 3-part series, though it's the first one of the series that I played. You take on the role of Yuri, who is a man who can turn into demons, and he is also the protagonist in the first game. Covenant involves a secondary protagonist as well, who is Karen, the girl on the cover here, who's an officer in the German army. And there are so many JRPGs that are great on the PS1 and the PS2. That was sort of the time frame that I was most into the genre. And what sets Shadow Hearts Covenant apart is actually two things. The first is just the number of different systems involved and how fun pretty much all of them are. The first thing that really makes a difference for me is something called the Judgment Ring, which comes into play whenever you're in combat. It pops up when you want to do an attack, a heal, use an item, basically anything. So the judgment ring is basically a timing exercise, so you have to press X as it goes into the right part of the judgment ring, and if you fail, you don't actually execute your attack. So this just really sort of ups the ante a little bit and makes it more interesting to do the turn-based combat. I'm a big fan of turn-based combat, but can get a little bit on the slow side, especially for, you know, just your average fight that you're coming into rather than something like a boss fight. So the second thing, or the second part of the mechanics and systems, is that every single character in your party has their own special set of abilities and their own way of increasing or learning new abilities. So for example, you have a character named Blanca who is a wolf, and Blanca takes part in an international dogfighting ring where he'll find an opponent, and when he beats them, he'll learn a new ability. There's also a character called Geppetto, who is a puppeteer, who has a doll named Cornelia, and she learns new abilities by getting new dresses. And she gets new dresses by finding stud cards out in the world, and then trading them with a tailor, who will then give you a dress in return. So that sort of brings up the second thing that makes this game really special, is just its sense of humor and its just overall goofiness. The stud cards are basically what they sound like. They portray scantily clad men in different professions. So like there's one called Mr. Sommelier, and it's basically a picture of a naked man holding a wine bottle so you can't see his bits. And you trade that in for a pretty new dress. There's also a character called Joachim, who is a pro wrestler vampire who can turn into a bat, and the culmination of his sort of personal special abilities is the man competition, which is also quite like it sounds like. He's a pro wrestler, so he has to go through a tower of other male pro wrestlers, and it gets rather homoerotic. One of the villains in the game is Rasputin, and his girlfriend, whose name is Veronica, I think, is a dominatrix. I mean, she dresses and looks and talks like a dominatrix. And the game's just really, really goofy. Like, it doesn't take itself too seriously. I mean, it has a lot of sort of sexual humor, but it doesn't feel like it's exploiting anyone or particularly one-sided for who it appeals to. So it's just a really, really fun and funny game. And though the story is sort of your typical JRPG, save the world from bad guys type of thing, it's just those special little touches, like all the different systems and abilities and all the attention to detail that goes into shaping all these things, and then just all the jokes that really makes this game fun. So that's it. Those are my top 5 games on the PlayStation 2. Feel free to leave me a comment to let me know what some of your favorites on the system are. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.